Good day to you, and here's a sample of Mexican radio.
No estás solo. Acércate a la CNDH. 25 años junto a ti.
En 5.000 años la temperatura del mundo aumentó alrededor de 5 grados y tan solo en los últimos 25 años subió más de medio grado. Esta tendencia es catastrófica. En México el clima cada vez es más extremo.
La cadena que une a México.
Esta es XHBU 97.1 FM, 15.000 watts de potencia. Estudios y oficinas, Avenida Miguel.
Platicando sobre los temores, sobre los...
El cuerpo, el celular y en él un mensaje que decía: te amo, eres un gran padre. Cuando manejas a unas cosas importantes.
Que ando borracho de amor y mi pobre corazón esta sentida no aguanta.
And how different it is from American radio with its various formats. Something we're going to talk about in today's chapter on radio. You know, Mexican radio has a lot of talk on it. It's one thing that makes it different from American radio. Not that American radio doesn't have talk, but Mexican radio is filled with people discussing things. So let's dig into this chapter on radio. In the background, in case you're wondering, that's my barbecue here in Mexico. I made it myself. It's made out of tile. And we do a lot of cooking here in Mexico on natural charcoal. Makes meals really tasty. And the tile work down here in Mexico is gorgeous, and you can make all kinds of pretty things, as many people do, and fountains and walkways and adornments to their houses. It's just spectacular to look at every single day. So let's talk about the fact that the book opens with declining record sales, an idea that we will circle back to at the end of our talk today, because with the situation as it is, with people being able to grab music on the internet by copying so many things and downloading on torrents and doing file sharing, there isn't the need to have to go to a store and purchase a CD. There isn't the need to have to go online and purchase anything. Copyright violations are taking place all over the world. It's just a fact of the matter. So there's a lot of declining record sales, which naturally will influence radio. Radio is built on a model where it airs music, and the idea is that people who hear music will go out and purchase that music. That's what radio is designed to do, is to prime people to do that. And then, of course, radio is also selling advertising. Advertising is what's paying the bills for most radio stations in the United States. And so that is a little bit separate from declining record sales, because if people are still listening to the radio to listen to music that they wouldn't otherwise hear, then there is enough of an audience to be able to drive the price of advertising high enough so that radio stations can sustain the salaries and all the other costs that are associated with running a radio station. Now let's talk about the historical development of radio. And by the way, I just want to let you know, in case I haven't already made it clear, that I am the advisor to WESS Radio at East Stroudsburg University, and it's a really amazing station. I don't say that just because I'm involved with it. I'm saying that because in 2014, that radio station, WESS, won MTV's Woody Award, making it the best college radio station in the country, not just the state, in the country. We won the award, the Woody Award, the same year that Ed Sheeran won it, Drake won it, and Beyonce won it. So it's no small task. And we actually beat out Boston University and Texas State, San Marcos, and UC Berkeley. We beat out some major heavyweights. So if you like music at all, it's an open club. I encourage you to come by and have a radio show. You don't have to be any particular major at ESU, and it's really just a lot of fun. People hanging out there, all different stripes and backgrounds of people who are at WESS. I even do 2 radio shows myself. It's just a lot of fun, and then you get to put on your resume that you did a radio show at the MTV Woody Award winner. At any rate, back into the history of radio, we know that television, when it came out in the 1950s, the book kind of alludes to this, doesn't make it all that clear, but when TV came out, All those golden age radio programs, the dramas, the sitcoms, the sci-fis, the mysteries, all that, they all went away because the audience migrated to television. I mean, who would want to listen to the Lone Ranger on radio when you can watch it on TV? So radio struggled with what to do in the 1960s, and a lot of people gave it up for dead. And actually what had to happen was radio reinvented itself. It reinvented itself with a brand new formula called niche radio formats, N-I-C-H-E radio formats. And this is the idea that instead of trying to be all things to all people, instead of trying to have over the course of 24 hours a program on radio that's for sports people, for sci-fi people, for soap opera people, for news people, instead of trying to be all things to all people, now radio had to become a niche-oriented medium, meaning it would offer just one specific type of content on one station geared towards a very narrow audience, like females 18 to 35, as opposed to all people 18 to 54. The top 3 formats in radio that you find today are country, as we mentioned in our last video lecture. That's the #1 format across the United States, followed up by news and talk, which you mostly find in big cities because there's so much going on and the density of the population is so thick. There's a lot of crime, there's a lot of events, there's a lot of news talk formats in big cities across the U.S. The third most common format is what is known as contemporary hit radio, or CHR radio as it's known in the industry, which is really just top 40. It's a really ingenious idea. The book doesn't talk about it, but there were 2 radio programmers sitting in an ice cream milkshake shop in the 1960s, and they watched people come in putting quarters into the jukebox, and what they found was that every 15 minutes, the most popular song would pop up, like Adele's Hello, which most people are oversaturated with by now, but they would notice, these 2 radio programmers, that the same songs would come up every 15 minutes, and that's because of the turnover in the milkshake shop. The customers would leave, new customers would come in, they'd want to hear the new song, they'd put a quarter in. So that gave them the idea, why not have a radio format that's based on the same idea, where the radio audience is turning over every 15, 30 minutes, so we can play the same song, the hits, every 15 minutes, every 30 minutes, etc. And so those formats are very different from what you just heard inside my house there, where we listened to some Mexican radio. We heard the very first kind of music, and it was really the only kind of music we heard, was what was known as banda music. It's from the state of Sinaloa. Mexico has 31 states, just like the U.S. has 50 states, and one of the states is Sinaloa. And banda music is a very common, very popular kind of music. Big bands, 15, 16 pieces of orchestra pieces. You've got tubas, you've got trombones, you've got trumpets, and then you've got singers singing in the style that you might recall there. Now let's move on to the genre of talk radio to explore it a little bit more. It's really exploded in the United States. It's exploded in 3 different subgenres, one being politics. And in the area of politics, mostly what you find are right-wing radio conservative hosts such as Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity. These are 2 people that are nationwide, and even here in Pennsylvania in the Lehigh Valley, there's Bobby Gunther Walsh. These are people that are right of center, normally Republicans, and it's filling a niche for people who want to get their politics through radio. Then there's also the subgenre of shock jocks. Howard Stern's the most famous one. Opie and Anthony are 2 other ones. They're both on Sirius Radio, S-I-R-I-U-S, Sirius Radio, which is a satellite radio company. The idea of shock jocks is to push the envelope of what is allowed by the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, especially in terms of obscenity, graphic talk about sex, drugs, and even profanity fits into that category. Shock jocks are able to do that. There's a need for that because people feel deprived by normal radio because it's not allowed to speak as people do in their everyday life, where people do swear and people do talk about sex. All right, and then we have the genre of sports. It's exploded mostly among males, although we have seen a growing female audience for sports talk. Here in our market area in East Stroudsburg, we have a sports radio station in the Lehigh Valley. It's an ESPN radio station. Sports talk is very, very popular in the U.S. Now, the year 1996 was a big year for radio because the Telecommunications Act was passed in 1996, and what that did was that allowed They own WZZO. They own WAEB, which is a news station. WZZO is a rock station. They own B107, which is a soft rock station, and they own that ESPN radio station I mentioned earlier. And what it's done is it's really kind of homogenized the radio content that you hear, because it's easier for them, the big companies that own radio, to have a formula where they play the same kind of music on all of their radio stations. So like I said with that song Adele, Adele's Hello, if you drive across the United States, you'll probably hear that 20 times in one day throughout each city as you're driving across. Also, they did something that was a little bit insidious called voice tracking. They came up with the idea, the big parent companies of radio stations, that why should we pay a disc jockey to stand in the booth for 4 hours when really all they do is talk for 15 minutes when you take out the songs that they're playing? So why not have them go into the booth in the morning before their show and record those 15 minutes of talk? Record the introductions of the songs, record the weather, record all the stuff they're going to say in that 15 minutes, and then use a computer program to spread out their talk and mix it in with the music. It's really an ingenious business model, but it's not too great for radio employment. Let's talk about the Public Radio Act now of 1967. That's what's responsible for NPR, National Public Radio, and also the Public Broadcasting System, which is the TV side of thing, which is the programming that you grew up with, maybe Barney or the Electric Company or Sesame Street. This is what our parents use NPR and PBS for when we're young, and then later on it tends to circle back for people who become well-educated and are interested in long-forming orchestral programming, documentary programming, jazz programming, local cultural affairs programming. Basically what this act did in 1967 is it set aside part of the FM band from 88 to 92 FM and said this can only be non-commercial programming. It cannot be commercial radio. And so within that 88 to 92, you also find college radio stations like WESS, which is 90.3 FM. It's in between 88 and 92. So it did a big favor to non-commercial radio stations. Otherwise, that part of the FM band would be bought up by commercial radio stations. Now let's go to the future of sound. Well, who knows what the future of sound is going to be, but we do know that with people buying less songs, there's less opportunity for record sales to be driving this business in radio. So what artists and also those in the music business came to as an idea was music licensing to generate revenue. And what music licensing is if a radio station wants to play an artist, they have to pay a fee to a license company that licensed that artist to the radio station. There are 3 companies. There's ASCAP, BMI, and the CSAC. You can look up what those acronyms stand for in the book. But we pay a fee, and WESS pays a fee, and every artist is associated with the music licensing company, which then turn around and distribute royalties to the artist. So that's one way companies are struggling with how to keep radio and music vibrant as an economic model. In actual fact, people can listen to music so many different ways today. They can play back stuff on their phone. They can listen to podcasts. WESS now is podcasting. Every single radio show that's broadcast by our station, including Warrior football games, for example, you can find on the website Radio Free America. It's changing the face of radio because no longer do you have to have appointment radio listening to be in front of a radio receiver when a show is on. You can go listen to it at your leisure. You can go retrieve that podcast. It's absolutely amazing. And also there's streaming, of course. Almost every single radio station is streaming, as well as individual people that don't even have radio stations. They're doing their own streaming, and companies are streaming that are not necessarily in radio. It's the ability to listen to music or other content over the internet, through your computer, through your tablet, through your cell phone. WESS streams. If you want to go to their website and listen to shows, you can listen if you're in Antarctica. As long as you have internet access, you can listen to streaming. And then there's the idea of clouds, music stored on clouds and distributed through various sites such as Pandora and Spotify and all the rest of them, which choose the music they're going to play for you based on what the analytics say are your preferences. But really none of this speaks to why radio still remains vibrant in the face of all these different technologies, including high definition radio, satellite radio, streaming audio, and podcasts. Radio is a medium that people rely on for its spontaneity, its companionship, and the ability to teach people new music that's out there. If you're left to just listen to your own music choices, you're by and large going to choose stuff that you're familiar with. That's what you have on your iPhone or whatever device that you listen back on. Radio presents you with new stuff, and that's why it's always going to be a vibrant medium, and more importantly, it's listened to in the car. And as long as we have a driving culture where people have to drive to work, you're going to have radio being a vibrant medium. Now, I mentioned HD radio. I just want to backtrack for a moment and say what that is. It's high definition radio. At this point, it's more annoying than anything else because you can't get clear coverage of high definition radio. You drive in and out of it, and your radio comes on clear, then it comes on a little bit fuzzy, then clear, then fuzzy. So it's not really considered to be a vibrant method of listening to radio, but in the future, if the coverage improves, it may do for radio what high definition television has done for sports, talk shows, and film, and everything else that you can see crystal clear images on television. And now that leads us to the final concept for talking about radio today, and that's piracy. Piracy continues to be an issue. It's something that I mentioned is responsible for declining record sales, but it's also hurting artist royalties and providing a disincentive for artists to want to create music because they don't feel that it can be an economically viable income for them because people are stealing music all the time. Probably 90% of people in this class, if not 100% in this class, have a song on your phone right now that has been illegally downloaded. And so is the question, should music be free and accessible as long as you're using it for your personal use? Because once you start to make money off of it, then piracy becomes a different issue, doesn't it? But if you're just listening to a song for your personal use, then maybe piracy, in a way, is a legitimate form of getting a hold of that music. That's for you to consider. And that's going to wrap up our instructor video today on radio. Have a great day.